ruthless,
ruthless.
Tàn nhẫn.
His assistants could be ruthless in their quest to further Marsh's scientific ambitions.
This was something company officials, like the ruthless Jan Peterson Kuhn,
who make mistakes and have to deal with the consequences, who are ruthless and intelligent, and it's such a brilliant book. It's
advocating for these types of ruthless neoliberal market dynamics enacted by
offensive against Serbian police and politicians. Serbian forces responded with a ruthless ethnic cleansing program.
High definition.
Độ nét cao.
high-definition television.
Look through one of the high-definition zoom cameras, and you'll be able to see for miles in any direction.
Whether it was VHS to DVD or high definition, it's all, better pictures, right? Sharper pictures, better sound.
We can get data moving faster, and we get things like high-definition video across that data stream.
By definition. Theo định nghĩa.
By definition must be fair and reasonable.
Do that. A date, by definition, means you get out of the house and you do something interesting.
A shared experience, by definition, you cannot do by yourself because it's shared.
Subjective concepts. And so, by definition, those who wield power are going to wield their discretion in ways that predictably are going to perpetuate their power and not empower those who have traditionally been silenced or marginalized.
Wield.
Wield. W-I-E-L-D.
Able to wield powers within their boundaries as they see fit.
Concepts. And so, by definition, those who wield power are going to wield their discretion in ways that predictably
huge amount of economic and political clout to wield in their favor.
To wield what we come to know.
Happy with those who wield any form of power in this country.
Discretion.
Discretion. Sự thận trọng.
Which allowed companies to have the discretion to assess their systems and prioritize where they needed to focus cybersecurity efforts. I think
we also had the legal issues covered. Any FDA-approved device can be used at a doctor's discretion in a life-threatening emergency.
Now, we need wisdom, we need discretion, we need to recognize where our own temptations lie and where those levels are that we can handle.
At the discretion of. Theo quyết định của.
The goal is to find a flight home. There's nothing that's regularly scheduled, and any plane you get on is at the discretion of the pilots anyway.
Cruise liners can change the schedule at any time at the discretion of the captain, so there is no guarantee that the ship will stop at any port of call.
By the way, most filmmakers have no control over the way that their movie is marketed. Usually, it's at the discretion of the film distributor, and we all know
rules for the trial itself. The bottom line is that most major decisions are ultimately at the discretion of the Senate itself. Basically, there are relatively few rules that can stand in the way of a Senate majority, and most of them are fairly easily changed.
Discipline and reward came at the discretion of that master.
Tax dodge. Trốn thuế.
Dodge. Dodge.
It's a tax dodge, and that isn't true. Lots of you are in a limited company.
Capital gains tax dodge up until
income or estate taxes. Also a tax dodge or a scheme or avoidance trick or maybe a scam.
This is a corporate tax dodge. Basically, it's
No, let me point out the obvious tax dodge of owning stock in a company for a decade while spending 9 of it on ice.
If Paradise was just some kind of city-sized tax dodge, you're right.
Dodge. Né tránh.
We've dodged death.
Dodged that. I dodged that.
That one. So, we dodged that one. So Mother Nature doesn't ever let you dodge any hazard. And so thinking about how many years, 100 years, 1,000 years, it's a pretty big investment.
Own risk, hid losses, disregarded risk limits, manipulated risk models, dodged oversight, and
missed a bullet. We had this time. We dodged a bullet.
I'm glad I dodged that one.
One of the candidates answered or dodged a question, and then during the breaks or after the debate, they would go back and say, Americans thought that,
dodged a bus fare, or if you've dodged a bus fare,
here or abroad by jumping on a bus and not paying for a ticket and jumping off again.
Oversee.
Oversee.
Giám sát.
Killing, he would personally oversee them cutting a victim's head off.
Hadrian traveled all the way to northern England to personally oversee the construction of a gigantic wall across the whole island of Britain to keep the northern invaders and raiders at bay.
Death Star went on to personally oversee the construction of the second Death Star, which we assume was much like the first Death Star, with the exception of the addition of a single exhaust port cover.
Who's appointed by the court to oversee the development of these reforms and the implementation of them over time, are negotiating changes that...
I was appointed by the king to oversee every arrangement to prepare for his arrival, be that making sure the larder is fully stocked or that the hall is ready to receive guests.
The only country to have appointed someone independent to oversee this.
So help me God.
Special counsel Robert Mueller was appointed to oversee the investigation into ties between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Implementation.
Implementation.
Việc thi hành, triển khai.
The implementation of renewable energy.
Other is now weighing the implementation of sanctions against the country.
With the successful implementation of these standards.
Well, I think successful implementation means everybody wins, beginning with students. I mean, they're going to be better prepared with 21st century skills for the workforce that we have.
After there's some miscommunication, and the implementation of the idea didn't go so well, and the actor was not shaped in the way.
Right now, what phase that's in and the implementation of that, we'll talk briefly about the campaign launch, and then we'll have questions and discussions. So everybody ready?
Nevertheless.
Nevertheless.
I knew a lot about the subject already, but her talk was interesting nevertheless. Tôi đã biết rất nhiều về chủ đề này, nhưng cuộc nói chuyện của cô ấy vẫn thú vị.
We are nevertheless housed in heart-pumping, breath-gasping, decaying bodies, simultaneously gods and worms.
Nevertheless, Rockefeller ordered troops to retake the prison.
But nevertheless, they are being undervalued, and the law...
Nevertheless, their presence on the stands provoked the Liverpool fans.
The story ends with the golem. Nevertheless, the story ends with the golem waiting in the attic of a synagogue in Prague to be reawakened the next time persecuted Jews need protecting.
Nevertheless, the Gun Control Act of 1968 passes with the NRA's support.
It will be difficult to house all the refugees. Sẽ rất khó để chứa tất cả những người tị nạn.
To house all students on campus.
This little tube is going to be able to house all of the pills you might need for your trip.
Still needs to house all of the electronics underneath, so any flex...
Like, you don't need a bat cave to house all that energy, because rail storage can work anywhere with an incline.
It is actually ezier to house all sorts of things.
A place within our movement to house all kinds of ways to throw spaghetti at the wall and to do the house all your components in.
Clout.
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 Financial clout. Ảnh hưởng tài chính.
In addition, when the Chinese use their financial clout to buy or make strategic investments to gain access to American technology or to personal data,
people without necessarily the financial clout.
Corporations from using their financial clout to directly interfere with elections by running advertisements for or against candidates in the crucial closing weeks.
Background, financial clout. And
They have a huge amount of economic and political clout to wield in their favor.
They've got a whole lot more political clout and they've got a whole lot more money.
And for what you're doing has a lot of political clout.
Some kind of political clout.
Ingratiate.
Ingratiate. He tries to ingratiate himself with the boss by saying that all her ideas are brilliant. Anh ta cố gắng lấy lòng ông chủ bằng cách nói rằng tất cả các ý tưởng của cô ấy đều tuyệt vời.
Used pop culture to actually ingratiate himself with black voters, even as he was executing Ricky Ray Rector and doing what he did with Sister Soul.
I had to ingratiate myself and allow myself as much as possible to be a fly on the wall.
In which he has made the calculation, I should ingratiate myself with the president, go golfing with them.
About how they ingratiate themselves to the guys who wrote the biggest check.
day and smile and try to ingratiate yourself to him. So when the leader calls for another "will you die for me" show of support, of course you line up, you get your Kool-Aid, and you serve the first drink as is custom to your child. And
to ingratiate myself with the waitress, I said, sure, why not?
Ceramics, but I wanted to be as ingratiating as possible.
Way of maybe ingratiating himself with Castro because he wanted to. Making friends, they're ingratiating themselves to the young people. They're being generous, and so one could say, well, yeah, this is
appreciating a larger public, or are we defining?
You could respond to it by being ingratiating. Between these, says Aristotle, lies the virtue of friendliness.
Tục ngữ có câu.
Thing, as the saying goes, it's better together.
That there is a season for all things, as the saying goes.
By 1943, the
saying goes, democracy is not a destination.
To be a fly on the wall, as the saying goes.
As the saying goes, prayer is, as the saying goes, prayer is how to do nothing and still think you're helping. Now, prayer.
As the saying goes, a picture paints 1,000 words.
And as the saying goes, if you can pass legislation here, you can pass it anywhere.
As the saying goes, it can speak 1,000 words.
As the saying goes.
Như câu nói này.
Goes, after the storm. As the saying goes, after the storm, the sun will shine again.
And as the saying goes, a rising tide lifts all boats.
And goes, as the saying goes, when the soul is willing, but the flesh is weak, the soul is never going to fulfill the mission that it's on. It simply can't.
So that's my prediction for the future, that, as the saying goes, you ain't seen nothing yet. It's just like the
saying goes, when it rains, it pours. The saying goes, this is what it is. Here it is. One size fits all, as the saying goes, this is what it is. Goes, power to the pickles. But as the saying goes, power to the pickles.
Not putting food near your place of work to avoid tempting yourself. As the saying goes, out of sight, out of mind.
Coat in light sensitive emulsion, as the saying goes. So
you want answered? Saying goes, because as the saying goes, you snooze, you lose.
And I believe that there is a season for all things, as the saying goes.
Find a way to pursue them. There is a season for all things in life.
Tug of war.
Kéo co.
If you had a tug of war competition,
with a monster, we get into a tug of war with a monster.
Tug of war between the CIA, sort of a tug of war between the CIA and the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
It's kind of a tug of war, but I think what we try to...
It's like a tug of war contest. Okay.
Nib.
Nib.
Đầu ngòi bút.
Đầu ngòi bút.
Pen with an 18-karat gold nib.
To clean the nib or to change colors, simply dip it in water.
I don't want to put that nib into the holder.
There's also one with a little bit smaller nib as well.
Rancid.
Rancid.
He scooped up those rancid clothes and made off to the nearest waterfall.
Oil rancid.
Dầu ôi thiêu.
Not the same thing, so it's really complicated. But what I have found is starches tend to go very rancid very quickly.
And it doesn't take much oxygen to turn the oil rancid.
Rancid.
Trở mùi, bị ôi, hôi dầu. Trở mùi, bị...
Both are known for having a kind of rancid, cheesy smell. I'll just smell like those rancid, cheesy compounds, especially after we sweat.
The flesh quickly turning green and going rancid. By February 14th, all of coal had been eaten.
I'm not advocating for.
Tôi không ủng hộ.
Advocate.
Advocate.
I'm not advocating for these types of ruthless neoliberal market.
I'm not advocating for any particular form of government, but I will say this. I am advocating for citizenship.
And talk about being brave. Now, I'm not advocating for you all to climb up flagpoles.
I'm not advocating for civil wars or anything, but in this particular case, it was useful because before the war, the British...
Now, I'm not advocating for blind optimism.
And I'm not advocating for layoffs, although I'm
not advocating for one over the other. And I can say that
Now, I'm not advocating for only mentorship under a corporate umbrella.
I'm not advocating for teen smoking here. I'm not advocating for teen smoking here.
Advocating for that for everyone, I think. And I'm not advocating for that for everyone. Advocating for that for everyone. I think it's equally valid to have a 9-to-5 job and come home and be community engaged and have hobbies and have a rich life outside of your job.
Now, again, I'm not advocating for more and more pain, but I'm saying this, God.
I'm not advocating for the resurgence of this plan.
And I'm not advocating for any, like, the smoke perp thing.
I'm not advocating for teenagers to have sex. Teenage girls for teenagers to have sex. I'm saying teenage girls are sexual beings.
I'm not advocating for myself, I'm advocating for him.